Next up, I'm really excited to bring on stage a fantastic panel of investors. Um, we've got, we want to talk about a few things. Basically, when we think about Zoom, Roblox, Pinterest, these are some of the biggest examples of IPOs out there that are powered by visual tech. But a lot of these successes we think are just the tip of the iceberg. And so in this panel, they're going to explore some of the trends in visual tech across all different business sectors in society and try to let you know where they think are some of the next visual technology investment opportunities. And so we've got Christine Hall, who's from TechCrunch. She's been covering venture capital and startups. Previously, she was a contributing reporter at Crunchbase News covering fintech, e-commerce, health tech, biotech, agriculture, and food tech. And Christine's going to be moderating the session. And then we've got some fantastic investors. We've got Amy Kruse, who's the general partner at Prime Movers Lab. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. We also have Wendy Schadeck, who is a partner at Northzone and focuses mainly on companies in the consumer health, fintech, developer, and Web3 space. And then I think we also will have joining us Adrian Fenty, who is the founding managing partner at Mac Venture Capital. We're just trying to promote him over to be a panelist, so he will join as soon as he's here. But ladies, I will let you take it away.
Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for having us on here. I am going to let our fabulous panel introduce themselves. And Amy, why don't you go first? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your fund, and maybe one of your most successful visual tech investments thus far?
All right. Yeah. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. It's been a fantastic day today. Apologize for my voice. I got my first cold in 2 years, so my immune system was very excited to try and ward that off. I'm a neuroscientist by training, actually, a PhD in neuroscience, Dr. Amy Kruse, and spent most of my career actually started out in the government. So as a program manager at DARPA, stayed in the defense industry for about a decade, and then got the startup bug, became a co-founder at a startup called Optio, doing applied neuroscience for human performance, and most recently joined Prime Movers Lab as first a partner and now general partner overseeing our life sciences work. Prime Movers Lab is absolutely a deep tech venture investing firm. We look for breakthrough science that has the potential to impact billions of lives, and so have just been absolutely thrilled with the topics that have been covered today, because we too have a very broad agenda of how deep tech and obviously visual tech will intersect with the future of humanity. And I think that's one of the things that I've heard as a theme today that's been so exciting, and definitely want to pull on that. We are actually work across 2 stages. So we work at the early stage, seed plus, whatever we're calling the middle stage now, and Series A from our early stage fund. And we also have more recently an early growth fund that's allowed us to make investments in sort of B and early C size companies. So we really have the ability to work across the landscape there, which has been really exciting for me as someone who's also been, in a big business, small business, large business, government, et cetera. And then over the last year, obviously, we have a specific focus area within human augmentation. And so that obviously covers neuroscience as well as some questions around diseases of aging, longevity, regenerative medicine. But my most exciting investment that intersects with visual tech over the past year has been an investment in a company called Cognition with an X, which is a brain-computer interface, non-invasive brain-computer interface that intersects with an augmented reality system that provides assistive communication for individuals with speech challenges. And so really excited to see where that develops. We closed that investment just at the end of last year, and excited to see where it heads. So I'll hand it back over to you.
Very good. Yeah, Wendy, you're next.
Great. Hi, everyone. Good to see some of you, and thanks for the rest of you for being in the audience today. I've had the pleasure already of learning so much in the presentations before this one. Quickly about myself, my name is Wendy Schadeck. I'm a partner at Northzone Ventures. We're a generalist venture fund investing across Europe and the US, seed through Series C. We've got about 3 billion under management, and we've been investing for over 22 years. And some of our actually more interesting winners in our portfolio, and I think a lot of venture funds have seen this in the past few years due to the acceleration of tech adoption throughout COVID. which was an unintended, positive consequence of all of that happened. Some of the most accelerated companies have been in visual tech. So companies like Hopin, companies like Spring Health, which is one of mine in New York. And I'm happy to talk more about those. But my focus has really been on the fringes of kind of the newer infrastructural waves of tech that I think, now we're relabeling as Web3, previously crypto, previously blockchain and distributed systems, and even, before that, just Bitcoin. And then on the other end, some of the kind of things that have been around for a while, applying themselves to heavier industries with more complicated value chains, such as healthcare and real estate, et cetera. And so I'm very much kind of working two different jobs in a barbell approach.
Very good. And Adrian, nice to see you. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and your fund and one of your most successful visual tech investments to date.
Okay, great. So I am one of the 3 general partners at Mac Venture Capital. We have 6 full-time investors total. We're split evenly between Los Angeles and Silicon Valley. I sit in Menlo Park, where I am today. We invest in all kind of technology startups, mainly software and enterprise, but we've got some pretty exciting consumer and hardware companies also. So I'd say Wonder Dynamics, which I think a few of the people on the panel are aware of, is probably one of the most directly in the sweet spot of visual technology. They're building software that allows the masses to create great film and great visual technology through their own iPhone, their own cell phone, without having to have big blockbuster kind of budgets and equipment. And so we're really excited about that company. We invested the seed. They raised a very successful Series A. They're based in Los Angeles, and I think you'll hear a lot more from them. But we have others as well, everything from self-driving cars to enterprise virtual reality.
Very good. Yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah, Amy, let me start back with you. You were talking a little bit about kind of the visual tech and life sciences, and one of the things that I wrote about years ago was kind of when pathology was sort of getting into this space, and at the time it was really new and there wasn't too much to talk about. But some of the things that I've read, that you've talked about is kind of with neurology and all and visual tech in that space. So tell us a little bit about what you're seeing there. Like, is that kind of where you're seeing a lot of the attention thus far in life sciences?
Yeah, I think we're absolutely seeing much greater emphasis on visual tech, imaging, the imaging modality, and how it's being integrated with the variety of different application spaces, and kind of keying off something that Julia and Abby were talking about this morning, right? Is you're seeing imaging now being combined with some of the omics, right? And, whether it's proteomics, genomics, those types of things. So you're really getting this fusion of information where you might have just looked at imaging all alone, it kind of standalone when you think about pathology, and now you're kind of like multiplexing it with all of these other data sources. And I think it's a really interesting development in the life sciences. The other thing I would say is sort of 2 things to play off of. One is that I've seen quite a few companies now using imaging and pathology in very different ways. So we're used to sort of like scanning, right? You're used to seeing maybe 3D scans, maybe, slices or other things like that. Seen a lot of companies that have been using the eyes as a gateway into what's going on in the brain and what's going on in your physiology. So sort of like a really interesting play on, visual tech and visualization, actually visualizing the eyes themselves as a portal. And I think the other piece that we're seeing in therapeutics is that many of the therapeutics, whether they're drugs, small molecules, other things that are coming out, are really in need of, I would say, very precise biomarkers in order to both do those clinical trials and then bring them into therapy. And so imaging is playing a much more critical role, even in drug development and molecule development, because those 2 things are really part and parcel now. So that's been, some of the things that I've been seeing lately.
Interesting. Yeah, I've seen Wendy kind of take throwing this over to you. You were talking about Spring Health. I've actually seen companies where they, for, mental health and other types of things, they can, look at it even through like your phone screen. You can look at somebody's face and kind of tell, hey, that person is not doing so well today. And, then structure like questions for, what are you seeing, in that kind of the mental health and behavioral health spaces with visual tech?
Yeah, I would say, while that is certainly a very, interesting and inspirational use case, I think a lot of what is broken about mental health care as a category is so much about getting first access and then the right kind of care. And right now, visual tech's biggest role in that is just making sure people are seeing providers that are able to give them a checkup in their mental health care, that are a right fit for them, but able to give them a checkup in their mental health the same that you would get a checkup in your physical health. I mean, that doesn't even happen today as a category broadly, which is, if you think about how crazy that sounds, it is. And so much of the success in this category so far has just been about making that human connection. And I think, and we shouldn't downplay that, because video for mental health care is such a powerful enabler in that way, because you can emote, you can, see the facial expressions, connect with the provider, and having kind of good video tech to enable that is the first, I think, stepping stone. And then beyond that, you can imagine more interesting facial recognition features being built. I don't know that that is the case yet in most of what's being offered, quite frankly, because it's still about getting kind of the right kind of care to the right kind of people. But we've seen interesting, applications on top of B2B video applications where you can interpret emotion and then display cues on the screen, whether it be for sales or for mental health, and help kind of use that to inform a prompt or script. Then the provider or the salesperson is able. It's getting, a little bit to the theoretical category when we're talking about that with medicine, but certainly in sales that's being done. But I think that, that would be a very, very interesting. And then the more kind of exciting part about all of that is then the data that you could create and then aggregate to help inform the entire value chain of care, whether it's mental health or some other category. That in itself is perhaps even more interesting than the improvement in just the interaction itself.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting. Yeah. Kind of playing off, Wendy, what you were saying, Adrian, I wanted to ask, Wendy had talked about something that, there are things that we haven't seen, with visual tech before, like what are you seeing in that space today that you didn't, 5 years ago?
Yeah, we invested in a really interesting company called Athena Security. And first of all, their core product is really interesting. It's kind of camera and sensor technology for detecting guns. So it's really useful, obviously, in like school settings, school systems, malls. So we're really high on the product. And then, so we invested in them, I think 2018. And then with the pandemic, they built out a product. They were one of the first to build out a product that was heat sensing. And so they sold that to governments and I think also malls. And so people would go in and you'd look into the visual technology and it would tell whether you had a fever. And there were some other companies that did this as well, but that was really important in the early stages of the pandemic. So just in that one company, two kind of really good examples of advanced technology using cameras and sensors that can impact public safety, healthcare, and other things.
Oh, very, very interesting. Yeah. jumping ahead, kind of, looking out and, 5 years from now, one of the things that I saw that LDV Capital reported on a little while ago was that, by 2027, they were predicting that there would be, at least 100 times more visual content in the world. And a lot of that, might be in areas of like content creation and live streaming and things like that. I'd love to, Adrian, I'll start with you. We'll go back the other way. What are some of the breakthroughs in visual tech today that you envision being with us, 5 years from now?
Well, I mean, I'm a huge fan of self-driving cars. So we have two companies in the portfolio. One is a little bit more radar oriented. The other one is kind of a full set of self-driving technology, and it's a company called May Mobility out of Michigan. So I mean, they have done terrific. They're basically kind of got a partnership with Toyota to kind of create their entire self-driving software and technology, and a lot of that is visual technology from cameras on the car. So like if you're like in Michigan, at the University of Michigan, because they're based in Ann Arbor, and you'll see these cars driving around, and the students see them and everything. And this is 1.0. It's just going to keep getting better and faster and safer. And I think 5 years is a great kind of time to measure self-driving cars in general, because hopefully we'll be, at level 4, and then soon after that at level 5.
Awesome. Yeah, Wendy, one of the things that we had talked about earlier was, topics that are, within this space that are, what you had called futuristic and actionable. And I really loved that. And you were, had touched on a bit on, Web3 use cases. Is Web3 something that will be a little bit more, I don't know if the right word is mature, but, thought out kind of over the next 5 years? And is that something that you're, looking at, or are there other things, within visual tech that you're looking at for the next 5 years as well?
Yeah, I think Web3 tends to be a fairly loaded word in that it speaks a lot to the infrastructural and economic / business model, like, infrastructure, I guess, of the next wave of technology. And that has a lot to do from kind of the crypto protocol. It has inherited a lot of the same characteristics from sort of the crypto ecosystem, and that in itself is not a complete picture, obviously, because beyond just the ability to build new organizations that divide value and capture value in different ways, and provide infrastructure and distribute data and capture data in different ways, there's got to be a different way to experience the web, and that isn't as discussed when in context of this, this word Web3, which is supposed to encompass all of the future of the web. And so what I like to think about there is, what are the new ways for consumers and businesses to experience the web, powered by now these really powerful enabling infrastructures, whether that be through more sort of immersive digital experiences, or kind of, different types of data, more social experiences. And I think visual tech is an important ingester and sort of method of exchanging data with this new web for consumers and businesses. And at Northzone, we generally try not to, create totally new businesses from our minds that will exist, because we're not that creative. The founders are much better at that. But what excites me is two things about these waves of infrastructures that are being created now, specifically in relation to, how we will consume and experience the web going forward. One is, in relation to visual tech, one is that now we have the ability to have perfectly elastic and scalable compute power across a much less centralized space of data centers, computers, through protocols. And so one of our investments in a company called LivePeer basically allows any video streaming upstart to be able to have, sort of perfectly elastic, scalable live streaming infrastructure at a fraction of the cost of Amazon, because they're not a monopoly and they distribute the work across a decentralized space of computers. That creates so much more room for experimentation for live video streaming, which is, generally a very expensive category of startups to get started on, because the infrastructure has to be so scalable. And then the other aspect that excites me a lot is you can trace ownership of visual technology and visual content back to people. So when you create, like, for example, NFT or a work of art within the Web3 infrastructural space realm, you can own that and you can distribute that and you can create different ways to monetize that in perpetuity. And that also is a very important enabler of innovation. So we're closely watching these things and seeing how they inspire application developers to start building. But I would say right now, at least, we're still at the beginnings of that. And within 5 years, I'm sure that's going to be very different.
Very interesting. Yeah, Amy, I wanted to ask you, it seems like with visual tech, it's a lot of it, like Wendy alluded to this about like immersive experiences, is that what you think is that a lot of what you're going to see like in the next 5 years as well in some of the tech areas that you're looking at?
Yeah. Sort of spurred by the discussion, I have two things that I wanted to cover. One is absolutely around the immersive experiences. And we're so used to thinking about, maybe whether you want to call it the metaverse, whatever you want to call it, in terms of maybe gaming experiences or maybe casual experiences. But what we're actually seeing is, companies and individuals and all kinds of startups moving towards training and a variety of different experiences, digital health, therapeutics, cognitive training, all types of things that can be delivered through these visual experiences. I think we're just at the very tip of this. Most people don't know, but I think it was maybe the first or second year into the pandemic, Walmart actually purchased 10,000 Oculus Rifts because they are moving all of their corporate training to virtual reality. Imagine being able to simulate Black Friday sales when all of us can go back to the mall and jam together, right? So there's just a host of things that you can do in the visual space. And then the fusion of the ability to measure brain activity, physiology, heart rate, where your eyes are looking, all of those things in immersive experiences. I think that's one of the top things we're going to see. So sort of that, let's call it enterprise training plus, digital health. The second thing is, as things move closer to us, Wendy referred to the mental health, ability to access care. I think we're going to see telehealth really bring resources closer and closer to us as individuals. So I think the intersection of telehealth and visual tech is going to be one of the areas that I am personally watching most closely, because diagnostics will move into the home, right? The first thing that will happen is they'll be in the doctor's office, then they'll be in the little CVS, little care thing. And then eventually you'll just take one home with you, right? And we're going to see that for a variety of different things, whether they're blood diagnostics, tissue diagnostics for looking at injuries and other things. So those are two areas that I'm watching very closely, because I think they're going to be breakout areas within the next 5 years.
Oh, that's very interesting. I can't wait to have things in my home that can help me do all of those things.
I know, right? Absolutely. Me too.
Well, Adrian, let me start back at you with this next question. So we just talked about, 5 years ahead, but now, let's look 10 to 20 years ahead. And kind of talk about, from your perspective, Adrian, what doesn't yet exist kind of in visual tech that you think might be a great opportunity for, investment in 10 to 20 years from now?
Wow, that's always a tricky one to ask a venture capitalist with a startup idea. But
you can copyright it if you want.
Exactly. We're on the cutting edge of what I mentioned quickly was I'll go into a little bit more at length, and that's enterprise mixed reality. I think virtual reality and mixed reality in general are still cutting edge. So, we invested in Within. Within was bought by Meta, and they have some terrific games and workouts that you can do, very consumer based. But we're just as excited about the enterprise. We invested in a company called GridRaster, which is a highly technical software product that allows any virtual reality or mixed reality hardware to be used to kind of better train engineers on like everything from fighter pilots to spaceships. And so with the kind of like, taking off, no pun intended, of the whole kind of space tech private sector industry, I think this is going to be a huge part of it, really being able to use enterprise mixed reality to either, to simulate everything from being in a cockpit, working rocket engine. So I feel like we just scratched the surface of that. And so I'm predicting that 20 years from now, the companies that are starting now are all going to be kind of multi-billion-dollar companies and a part of the ecosystem.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Wendy, what are your thoughts on what you haven't seen yet that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I would love to be able to replay this 10 years from now and see how right we were. Again, it's so hard to imagine the future, but I guess, at a very high level, I believe we're in a tremendous paradigm shift in this wave of tech where we're rebuilding entire economies and worlds online to be experienced in a way we've never experienced before. So that in itself is pretty big idea to grasp. And I think, exponential thinking is required there, which is not doesn't come very straightforward by drawing a line from today. But I think, we're seeing the ability for communities that have strong enough ties that they're maybe even beyond our national identities to be formed online. And again, things like metaverses, realities where we can experience ourselves and our identities, perhaps even more strongly than we can today online, powered by more immersive, potentially, or just pervasive visual tech. And I would imagine in order to do that, you would need to move a lot of the wealth that you have in today's world into that future world in things like digital currencies. And so I think we'll just see an even more dramatic shift of our lives online in those three ways.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Well, since we're getting down into time, I wanted to just let each of you give kind of like a one-line recommendation for founders looking to pitch you on their visual tech startup. And Amy, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, no, I always love to hear about tech in this area, and in particular because we're a deep tech firm. I always like to a founder or someone to start with telling me what their unfair advantage is. Those of us sitting in the seat of venture capital have the absolute luxury of seeing so many hundreds and even thousands of pitches each year, and somebody who helps me kind of get down to the point, understand what their special edge is, allows me to then kind of jump in and really start to understand what they're up to and learn more about them.
Great. Yeah. Adrian, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, so we'll do software and hardware, comfortable with both, excited about both. And we looked for really technical teams, killer founders like Amy, people who have an earned secret, some reason that either through work or personal experience, they're just ultra passionate about what they're going to build. And you can certainly reach out to us on macventurecapital.com. We actually have done a couple of investments even through our website. Yeah. Not just warm introductions.
Great. Wendy, how about you?
We're a much more generalist, less deep tech fund, I think. So in that way, I'd love to just talk to founders who have really great sort of product building experience or insight that's looking to leverage these new web infrastructures in a unique way to provide a better experience than what you can have today on Web 2. So I'm my Twitter DMs are open. That's where I'm the most reachable.
Fabulous. Well, thanks everybody for joining in the panel.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Fantastic,
having us.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. It's great to hear from all of you, Christine, Adrian, Wendy, and Amy. I love all the different perspectives and different stages and different teams.